Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. In this episode, I'm going to be giving a 3-month update on the creation of my brand new script writing course. Some of the lessons I've learned since we last spoke about it on the podcast. There have been a few bumps in the road, so we're going to learn a little bit about that. We're then going to be discussing the recent launch of Alex Hormozi's new book and course and some of the more unusual launch strategies that he's employed there. Which is hopefully then going to inform the launch strategy for Jamie's upcoming thumbnail and packaging course, which he has just started work on. So we very much hope you enjoy it.
Welcome back. I know you were gone for all of August at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh. So it's good to have you back. But obviously Gwilym's not here. He's currently ill, so we've sort of swapped you out. Hopefully next week all three of us will be back and we can carry on. But yes. How was Fringe and performing for all of these people?
It was good. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically this sort of the biggest arts festival in the world where Edinburgh basically shuts down and any available space that exists becomes a performance venue for comedy and music and theatre and all sorts of things. And it was a chance for me and my comedy partner to perform this hour-long show that we've been writing for the last year. And we basically did that every day for all of August. And I don't know, there's something about it. I actually wrote a newsletter about this. The idea of live performance kind of it impacts how I think about YouTube as well. And this is not just to make it relevant to the podcast, but it really did, in that it kind of speaks to this whole like idea that you really don't know what a video is going to be like until you do it aloud for the first time, whether that's in front of camera or to an audience of people. And it's very, very clear when you're doing something in a room that is initially quiet, when there are some things you're saying that are just very uninteresting, or, if you're repeating yourself or whatever it is. And so I don't know, maybe I'm forcing the moral of the story on myself to make it relevant. But it definitely made me think a lot about, like being brutal with what you keep in, what you cut out, that kind of thing, because an audience doesn't lie. And if they are silent, which blessedly they weren't most of the time.
Except from the booing.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine. I'll take it. Throw stuff at me. I don't care as long as there's something going on. But yeah, it was cool. Thank you for asking. And it's, I'm very, very excited to be back doing this.
It's good to have another podcast episide with you. It's been, like I said, it's been about 3-4 weeks since we've done one of these. And I think to your point, it's absolutely right. Whenever I've sort of had a script where it's word for word, sometimes it feels a little bit hard to get out, but on paper it looks fantastic. It's like, oh, that reads perfectly. But yeah, until you get out there and you actually start to do it, it's a completely different world. And I found that actually bullet pointing a script and then just speaking whilst recording as if you were doing it real actually then goes, oh, actually I need to talk about that thing. It'd be better if I say it in that way. And then you actually refine the script even more and it comes across more natural on video. So yeah, I definitely think, there's something to that and you're not making it up.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's good. I quite like that kind of hybrid approach. I spoke to Darby, another YouTube strategist, about this kind of thing. Sorry, Jamie, I talked to other YouTube strategists as well. I do apologize.
That's fine. It's fine.
I've just let that slip live on air. But yeah, he spoke to a kind of similar thing where, like you say, it just kind of helps you think, how would I say this more naturally? And now how can I refine the structure around how I would say it out loud? But yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I think this episode is largely going to be around sort of an update for your lead magnet, which is a small course. It might be quite a large course now, actually, since we last spoke, around how to write YouTube videos. And it would be good if you could kind of coach me on how to write your own course, what tips you have, because I'm thinking of doing one myself around thumbnail design. I would take you through it, or if you'd like to hear about sort of the plan I have for it. But it's one of those things where it ends up being like an absolute mountain of work. And you're like, okay, where do I start? How do I approach this? So a few episodes ago, you kind of gave us a little bit of information about this course. How's it gone since? What's the update?
Well, I mean, for context, for everyone listening, we still haven't released... as we record this, we haven't released any of the episodes. And so I haven't listened back to them. And I'm not necessarily looking forward to hearing how naive I sounded when I first spoke about it. Because I think I might have said something like, I expect that I will have this course done probably before I go to Edinburgh, but if not, like during. And even when I went there at the start of August, that was my aim. I was like, I'm not doing any client work, but if I can just work on the course a little bit every day by the end of the month, it'll be good to go. That is not the case. It is still very much in progress. For anyone listening to this who is signed up, I know I've said this over email anyway, but just another big thank you for your patience with me. Because it's no joke. It's a big job. And what you described there, the kind of stage you're at, is kind of how I approached it. But I think, and maybe we can work out what the lesson is from all of this somehow, but the way I've done it has basically been to brute force it. And I think there's probably a better way. Yeah. Yes. I think there's probably a better way of systemizing what I was doing. The first step was very much the same for me. It was like just spamming out like completely freely, kind of like, as I teach about the start of a YouTube video, like that's like the first step, is just not being too kind of picky with it and not worrying about exactly what you're saying. Just like get everything out.
Is that for the modules or for the actual lessons themselves?
That was just to figure out even what the lessons would be and what would be in them. Yeah. And so I was going back through like my highest performing tweets, taking stuff from that, going back through old newsletters, taking stuff from that, thinking of the stuff that I assumed would be in there. So like, okay, it'll be stuff to do with the hook. And then at first I was like, how do I break it down beyond hook, the middle bit and the end? That was the original way it was going to be structured. And it essentially was just spamming it all out. That seems to be the best way. Like, so far, I think you're all good. It's then taking that bit onwards. I felt like there have been times where it's been such an uphill struggle with it, just like, because it feels like I'm jumping around kind of randomly. Even once I had the structure finalized, it's like, I don't know, maybe I'll try and work on lesson 1 for today. And then I get a little way into it and it'll be like, oh, no, I'm not really feeling it. Let's move on to lesson 2. And then I do that. And then, oh, no, I'm sort of running out of steam with that one. Let's move on to lesson 3. And what I'm finding now, and maybe I've actually had this revelation just while saying it, the issue I'm having now is that there are certain frameworks that I will have, say, written in like lesson 20, which I think are going to be all good. And now I'm finally at the point of finalizing the content in all the earlier lessons. I'm then reaching lesson 20 again and seeing, I've kind of explained this already in lesson 2, but in a slightly different way. So is this lesson necessary? Or have I actually said it better in this lesson? Therefore, does this need to go up into lesson 2? So I think to a degree, my kind of regret, and this is what I mean by like brute forcing it, is like, it's been kind of random. I think once the structure is down, I would have been better off really trying to finalize lesson at a time. So I always knew, like, I was in the mindset then of the person taking it, where I finished lesson 2. This is what I have. This is the point in the script that I'm at. Maybe I've now created my audience avatar. Right. What is the next thing that I would need to do as a YouTuber making this script? And I haven't had that mindset because I've been very scatterbrained with it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting, because I know that people do take those two approaches of sort of having, quite a heavy lift of, I need to finalize this one lesson before I move on to the next. And then there's the slow burns approach, which is, I'm just going to let all of these lessons sort of slowly burn away. And I just open a lesson every now and again when I have a thought about it and just bullet point. And over time, all of those will amount to something. I think they both have their own advantages, but yeah, definitely it can lead to, I feel like if you don't have a North Star, that second approach can lead to things being a little bit general, and you yourself don't really know the direction that you're heading in, and it's probably slower. I think I'll definitely take that approach when I start to write my own.
Yeah, no, that seems right. And actually, what you say about the North Star thing is completely right. Where about, I don't know, maybe a third of the way into creating it, because I got a load of initial feedback from the people who pre-bought the course to see just what they wanted. That was the other thing, was then also like integrating all these different ideas from 50 different people into the structure I was already kind of building. It was like, it was just a lot to think about. But one person, the way they suggested it be is that, like, I think I was speaking to you about this when we met up yesterday, was like beginning with, imagining you enter the course with just an idea and no idea what to do with it, and you come out of the course with a fully fleshed out, engaging, retention optimized script that's ready to sit down and film. And as soon as that became my North Star, it became more like, right, okay, I think the thing that people find difficult about script writing is, ironically, the thing I was having trouble with when putting the course together, is like a feeling of kind of randomness and no sense of structure to it necessarily, and just not really sure what the order of things you need to do is to create a compelling script. And so the aim then became, right, how can I systemize this process as much as you can ever systemize something creative? Like, how can I create a framework for basically everything? That means when you sit down to write a script, you know, okay, today I'm doing step 1 through 5 of writing a script. Tomorrow I'll do step 6 through 10, and then the script is done. So that became my North Star. And that's when things became maybe a little easier. But I don't know, maybe that's a good point to segue more into where you're at with yours, if you have that kind of North Star and like, well, yeah, what you see as being the place for this course in amongst other YouTube courses that exist.
Yeah, okay. Well, just before we jump into that, I want to say, yeah, I completely sort of empathize with you around trying to, systemize something that's creative, especially when a lot of it is, you've got an intuition for it. A lot of it is gut, I feel, because it's something, especially with something like thumbnails, you know what works and you don't know, and you know what doesn't work. And sometimes trying to verbalize something that's visual and you just understand from having done it so often is then very difficult, I find, to do to someone who just doesn't know anything about thumbnails. And so I found that in the process of writing newsletters, of writing YouTube videos, of explaining this to my clients, I've got better at it and it's become easier. And I think it's an Einstein quote where he's like, if you can't explain, or a Richard Feynman quote was like, if you can't explain it to like a 10th grader or something like that, then you don't know it. And the more I've been able to actually verbalize my thoughts, the easier it's actually got to educate people. And I think that's going to be like a huge upside for you of doing this this course. And for me, when scripting these thumbnail videos, it's really going to force me to kind of think about how can you take someone from a foundational level and sort of bring them up a notch or two on the ladder where they're going to understand, the fundamentals of thumbnail design and thumbnail strategy, where they can actually start to make good thumbnails. But it's kind of like, where do you start? Like what is the first thing to do with thumbnails? And so I can take you through sort of the ideas that I've got, because what I've thought about doing was a video course, but there's so much more around it that I want to do. But the video course, I've thought, and this could change, instead of doing one video course, I might do 2 video courses that you watch, whatever one that you're sort of weakest in first. But I want one to be around the design. So it's like, here's how you actually make a thumbnail look good in Photoshop, and explain sort of the tools. And this is how I've made these thumbnails for certain YouTubers. And this is what you need to do just because people don't know a lot about Photoshop. A lot of people create thumbnails in Canva, and I think that really limits you. And so just being able to use something like masking, which is very basic, can have such a huge impact on the level of thumbnails that you're able to create. And so I want to create an entire course around the thumbnail design. And then I want to create another course to the side of that, which is around the psychology and the strategy of what actually makes a thumbnail clickable. Because in my opinion, that is the biggest part of the thumbnail. And people constantly forget about that. And it's why they will hire a thumbnail designer and they get a thumbnail that looks good, but actually it's lacking in what actually makes someone click. And there's a huge difference between the two, but beginners just don't understand that. They think it's as simple as, I can't do these thumbnails myself in Photoshop, so let me just pay someone to do it and I should get the result. And then they don't, and then they get frustrated and they sort of don't understand what's going wrong. I've got all of these great looking thumbnails, but usually that's to capture someone's interest on the homepage. Be like, oh, that's interesting. But then you've got to make them have something that makes them want to click. And usually that bounces quite well off the title. So I feel like in this course, the titles are going to come a part of it as well. Because really this isn't, I guess, a thumbnail course. It's more of like a packaging course. Maybe that would be the better angle for it. But yes, I'll kind of explain what's going on.
Could I just ask, before we go into the, like, more of the finer detail, this is like just a point of interest for me. And, generally, when you talk about what makes something clickable, that's like it's something that's different from like how nice it looks, but like, is it clickable? To what extent is that defined by the audience avatar that the person is trying to attract, versus are there some things that will religiously be clickable based on what they are in your experience?
Yeah, there are certain sort of emotions that you can pull on that will affect one target audience compared to someone else. You know, you all have your general sort of conversion prompts like curiosity and fear of missing out and urgency and scarcity and things like that, which are obviously quite general. But there are other things that are quite niche because a lot of it is around language, you know, the words that you use and how that affects, you know, a gamer who's in their teenage years versus a 60-year-old gardener. Right. And that's completely different to like a tech pro. Right. So you kind of really have to know your target audience and the words that you're using and how you position it. And also like the intelligence. I don't want to kind of get too much into that because I feel like I'll probably say something that will get me cancelled. But there are certain things that you can say that won't work on a highly intelligent person that would on I don't know the word to use, but like yeah, like an average person, let's say. You know, so there is a lot that goes into it, and I will touch on all those things when I've thought about it and written it in a way that doesn't get me cancelled. But there's a lot that goes into the thumbnails around sort of the behavior of certain individuals and kind of knowing who it is that you're targeting. And there is a world of research that I'm going into in this particular course from the research that I'm doing on what makes people click. Because like I said, it's about psychology. You know, a lot of people think, oh, it's just about making a YouTube video. You know, it's like, actually, no. You know, there's a reason why billboards and newspaper ads and all of these things from even back in like the 50s still work to this day. There are stories to pull upon there that we can learn lessons from. And so I really want this to be like an outstanding course that isn't just here's how you use Photoshop, or by the way, curiosity is great, guys. Make sure you get people asking a question before they click, you know, because it's quite basic and on the surface level. I want to go a little bit deeper into this course to really sort of be the next level of education around this kind of thing. And so to touch on why I wanted to make this was, a couple of weeks ago, Alex Hormozi sort of released his $100 million leads book, and just how he rolled that whole thing out was just crazy to watch from a marketing perspective. And this course I've had in my head for over a year now, so it was nothing to do with sort of what Alex had done that inspired me to make it, but it sort of like reignited the idea of I should probably put something out, but should I charge for it or should I make it free? And we've had sort of like private discussions around that. And obviously your pre-launch has done quite well in terms of sales and the money made. And I'm interested to see kind of where you go once that's actually launching out into the world. But I'm also thinking, you know, I could definitely do the Hormozi thing of releasing this thing for free and making it so good that it's like the go-to asset for learning about thumbnail design. Because there aren't many thumbnail courses out there, but I think it's one of those things where there's going to be hundreds, you know, at some point. And so if I could get in there with like a free one that's better than all of the paid ones, I think that will do well for me. Because the thing is I don't really consider myself a thumbnail designer. I do design thumbnails for big YouTubers. I have got loads of views on those thumbnails, but it's not my main thing. You know, it's sort of like the thing that I do on the side of my main consulting. And what I really want to do long term with sort of my brand is actually build a brand bigger than myself, a company that's around education in the creative space, and not just for creators, but for businesses. And that is going to be like all about thumbnails, then about titles, and about editing, and about scripting, and like kind of like the whole process, and make this into like a very, very just incredible business. And I feel like thumbnails is really why I know the most about it. And so I really want to have that as my first product or free lead magnet. And so, yeah, let me read through some of the things, unless you've
before
got to say.
I do, yeah. So like a few things there. First of all, like very cool. I don't know that we had discussed your kind of that like long-term goal before. So it seems like that's kind of like the grand North Star without the course even. Like that's like a really interesting and very exciting place that you sounds like you want to go. So cool, congrats. First of all. But then so I wanted to just very quickly go back to the kind of Hormozi thing, because there were like a couple of things just around having it go out for free versus not. First of all, I kind of want to know just like a tiny bit more about like what Hormozi's kind of rollout was, because besides it coming out, his book coming out, and is it his book or a book or a course?
Yeah, it was a book.
Book.
It was both.
Okay, it was both.
Yeah.
So beyond that and the fact that he was giving out for free, I don't really know much about the kind of rollout. But the kind of broader like question I have for you is like, first of all, I know I did mention this to you anyway, is it a worthwhile business decision for you to do in the short term, given how much the potential profit upside could be, versus someone like Hormozi, who is already very, very rich and doesn't need to worry about that. He can totally afford to do that. And then kind of in the same vein, one thing, it's been nice actually, this has become relevant again, that we talked about at the Edinburgh Festival. So I've been up to perform 5 or 6 times, went up a few times before that as just a spectator. I did a bit of improv in a couple of the years that I was up there. I directed an improv troupe nonetheless. And one thing we talked about a lot, because there's a lot of improv at the Fringe, not all of it is good. Mine wasn't always that good. But some of it is really amazing. Some of it is not so good. And there's one thing we were always adamant on, is that we can't take up an improv show and make it free, because there are a lot of free shows at the Fringe, because the perceived value of a free improv show is that it will just suck, and therefore we're not going to know, people just wouldn't show up to see it. And we noticed that as like a bit of a trend across improv shows that were free and improv shows that would charge a premium and get bigger audiences. Obviously there's a lot of factors involved in that, but given, I suppose, what I would hope is that we're, very much at the start of our like trajectories within this whole space. What is
so.
Yeah.
It's all downhill from now.
But what do you have any concerns? What do you think about the kind of the perceived value of putting a course out for free when we're not necessarily like the most known in this space yet?
Yeah. Okay. This is cool. This is good questions. If it all does go downhill, you should take up a career in sort of becoming an interviewer, maybe like a late night talk show host or something, because you're pretty good. It's a great question, because I know that that's absolutely a thing around perceived value, and there are people who will spend, let's say $5,000 on a course versus a free course, or even just like a $50 course. And the commitment that someone gives to that course is significantly different depending on the price point. Because if you pay for something that's premium, you take it more seriously, because I've got to get my money's worth. Otherwise, if I don't do this, it's a mistake. And there's a lot of guilt involved with not applying what you've learned. What you've paid for, compared to something free where you think, oh, well, it's probably not that good because it's being sold for free, right? So there's absolutely something there with that. It's also a fair point in that Hormozi has made lots of money. He's not necessarily concerned about making more, and so he's happy to give away the information for free. He talks a lot about giving away the information for free but selling the implementation. So in his case, it's what I want to do is I want to give away these books, like $100 million offers, which I have here, just prop standing by. And then his new book, which is Lead Magnets, not lead magnets, or just $100 million leads. And his whole concept really is, I want to give this information away to the beginners, so that in a number of years' time, these people are going to be like, Alex, you changed my life. You helped me get this business off the ground. I'm now making over $1 million. I think it's actually 3 million he's increased it to now. You've helped me make $3 million per year. I want to work with you. I want to join acquisition.com and you can help me scale my business. So he's basically nurturing these leads from early on, to the point where he can then work with them, where he sells his implementation and he gets equity in their business. So, if you were to apply that framework to what I'm doing, and you might be right in that this is flawed, because I don't want more thumbnail work. Like I said, I don't sell thumbnail services like a lot of people do, just because I'm more than a thumbnail dude, right? I do more than that. And in terms of like the time, like every hour, the price is significantly higher than a thumbnail. And so for me, putting this out for free and then getting a ton of thumbnail requests is not what I want. I think it's more around sort of establishing myself in a space of someone who's like, this was the best thumbnail course ever. I've anyone who's talked about this before hasn't done it to the level that you've just done it. And so that to me would mean more and sort of solidifying myself within the space. But also then when I come along with the sort of the business that I want to make, and there's like all of these additional products, then it's like that lead magnet for the thumbnail course was so good, I want to buy into that. And even if I was to launch this business and then hire thumbnail designers that you could use as part of an agency, you'd be more likely to go with me because I would have trained those individuals to have done it to a good level, because you know the course is so good. And then it's easier to generate business there because you have the status of actually have done it and have taught those people, because you obviously want to buy something from someone who's taught you something, as opposed to learning from someone and then going elsewhere. It's like all lead magnets, right? So again, like it might be a mistake to put it all out for free. It might have been better to make it a paid product. I know like Justin Welsh has like his $50 product and $150 product, and he's made like 300K, 400K from that over like the last few years, with his the content operating system and his LinkedIn content operating system. So yeah, I could be leaving who knows how much money on the table. But I don't know. I just think it's probably better in the long term to have this amazing resource out there for free.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I feel like Justin Welsh has made a lot more than that as well. I think it's yeah, like
I thought it was more 500K, but I didn't want to say that in case it wasn't true, because I know it's definitely above the 200, 300K mark.
Maybe for the sake of, sorry, I know this is now slightly breaking the podcast.
Yeah. That's okay. Well, you can search for that and I'll keep talking. So what I like about Alex Hormozi's approach is I'm going to help these people go from 0 to 1. I'm going to help them get to that 3 million mark, and then they're going to want to work with me. I think my approach there is, if I was to release something that's free and it helps someone start to make pretty good thumbnails, they'll then be more likely to work with me on a consulting basis, just because they've got a lot of value up front already. And again, it's around selling that implementation. So in the short term, that's what I think would absolutely help me. And as I said before, the long term is when I have employees and people who can actually work on this stuff. You could make an agency or just the education part of it, or I could have a community, and an upsell of that is you get access to my thumbnail designers, for example. Like there's so many different things that I could do. And there are other people that I know who have sold thumbnail courses in the past on a subscription basis, and they've made about like 70K this year alone. So it's not bad. But yeah, I think there's so many different ways that you can sort of skin this cat, as it were. And so we'll see. You know, like I said, I want to see sort of what happens with you, because you're, in my opinion, like the closest person to me in terms of like reach and what we do and the audience that we share. And like I say, it's doing quite well for you already in the pre-sale. So I would like to know what happens in the long term. And Michelle will discuss that on the podcast. So if you're listening and you're not sort of following or subscribing, be sure to do so to make sure you get those future episodes.
Yes. Yeah. I think we will probably do like, yeah, it would be nice to do in 3 months, 4 months, whatever, when mine's out, and say in like 6 months, 8 months when yours is out. Yeah, just to kind of, especially if we've had contrasting approaches, to like compare, and then maybe there'd be the need to do another one in like a year when it's like, the seeds that Jamie sowed for free now has netted him a sweet $1 million this year, whereas
I can hope.
Yeah. Whereas maybe mine just does like a consistent but lower amount. Who knows? One thing to add actually quickly is a quick look at Twitter. As of June 2022, Justin Welsh was doing 100K a month with his business, which is basically entirely that stuff. He doesn't do consulting, I don't think, anymore. So I think now it will be even higher than that. So yeah, there's different upsides, different ways to skin a cat, as you say.
I guess the difference is I want to help the people, where you want to charge the people, George.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I'm kidding. No, I think it's absolutely valid, like both approaches, because like you say, you're spending so many hours working on this thing, that even if you sold it for like $50, that would absolutely grow over time. I think there's no one sort of true way. I think they both have their pros and cons. And I think for me, I can always make it paid, later down the line. I can do what you're doing, which is give it out for free, get a bunch of feedback, then make it better and make that the paid version, or have a later thumbnail course where, because thumbnails change, like the strategies change over time. There'll be new, especially on like the design front, of like new tools that will be outdated as Photoshop updates, as their new AI tools grow. Like there'll be more to talk about. And so if I was to do a second course to do with thumbnail design, if you've taken the first, you're most likely going to buy the second course. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to sort of do it. But I'll run you down the list of what I think I'm going to offer in this course, and then you can tell me how insane I am. Because as I said, I was just like brain dumping. Oh, this would be cool to add. I could add that. I could make this. And because a lot of what sort of is in $100 million offers and in Hormozi's leads book is sort of just pack as much as you can into it and give it all away for free, where someone's just like, this is insane. So what the hell is the paid stuff like? And that's what I did. So I brainstormed a bunch of things. I've already kind of mentioned that there's going to be a mini course of like the psychological side, and then a second course around basic thumbnail design. I want to create like an A/B testing guide to sort of explore the importance of A/B testing and how to do it. Because a lot of people I speak to, they actually don't even know it's possible to do that. They don't know how to look at the data. Some people will just let TubeBuddy decide, when sometimes TubeBuddy doesn't get it 100% right. It really depends on when you do it, and I don't want to actually get into that because it's a very long discussion, but there's a lot that goes into that. You can't just like take what it says. You have to really look at the data. I want to create like a short PDF checklist and questions, sort of to ask yourself every time you want to make a thumbnail. And that will just be like a very, small thing on the side. I also want to have like another PDF that sort of lists the resources and tools that I make, that I use to make thumbnails. I then want to do into like some thumbnail breakdown. So that's going to be me breaking down some of the top thumbnails on YouTube and why they worked, and then also recreating them in Photoshop. So it's not just like, here's why it worked, but here's how I would have created this in Photoshop. So someone can actually see how the thumbnail is made rather than just the final product. Because sometimes it's great, like, oh yeah, that's a thumbnail that works, but I don't know how the heck I would make that. So that's something I want to do. Then I want to have a personal thumbnail breakdown. So this is going to be me opening up my Photoshop to some of the thumbnails I've created for big YouTubers, and actually showing, again, the actual design side of it in Photoshop, but then also the psychological perspective and sort of the strategy there of why I made the choices that I made, so that people can understand my thought process and hopefully start to think about thumbnails a little bit differently than they currently are. I want to have a how to hire thumbnail designers. So a short video on like how to do that, because every time I sort of speak to clients, I'm like, you should probably hire a thumbnail designer. I'm like, how do I do that? Who do I speak to? And I usually recommend like Ike Design and Thumbnail Girl and like a few others. But they're just like at capacity all of the time now, that when I'm working with them with some of my other clients, it's like, oh, they're busy. And it's like, oh, okay. So I need to kind of help with how to hire the designers and like how you give them the brief, how you come up with concept art, because a lot of people think, wow, let me just get a thumbnail designer and say this is the title and it's about this, and then they expect the thumbnail designer to make miracles. And there's nothing worse than that. You really want to say, this is what I've thought about, especially from a strategy perspective, because if you work with a thumbnail designer, a lot of the time these guys make their money through volume. So they it's a race to the bottom in terms of price. And then they will do, 20 thumbnails in a day, all to quite a basic level. They all kind of look the same, have templates, and they do that because then that makes a day's worth of money. And that's okay, but you're not going to get the best thing there, because that thumbnail design is not taking their time to think, how do I actually make this good? It's a case of how quickly can I make this and move on to the next one, because the more I make, the more money I make. Whereas a really good thumbnail designer will charge 150. That's sort of like the highest amount that I've seen people create. When I do thumbnails, I charge 350, 450 at times for thumbnails, because I spend much more time on that in both the design and the sort of the psychological side of it, and the ideation. And you get that more when you work with a better thumbnail designer. And so I want to kind of like help the YouTubers, the creators understand, how do I approach someone with that? How do I communicate that to them effectively? How do I find those who can do the strategy side of it and not just the design side of things? And so, yeah, I want to create maybe a video or a short PDF or whatever, sort of showing how you actually hire thumbnail designers. And then I also want to do the flip side where I'm like, how to get your first 5 clients as a thumbnail designer and sort of how to negotiate pay. Because like I say, the people who do this as their full-time gig charge from like $5 all the way up to like 150. I charge $4.50. Right. And it's not my main thing. So how am I able to do that? Right. Well, there's a lot. Again, I won't go into that, but that I want to put in there to help the thumbnail designers. So far this course is sort of like for YouTubers and thumbnail designers. Like I said, like there's a lot in there around if you want to hire someone, if you want to do it yourself, if you are a thumbnail designer, how do you get better clients? How do you get better results for your clients? How do you charge more? And you know, I can keep going, but there's more. You know, there's like an email newsletter that when you sort of sign up to it, it's going to give you like tips and video breakdowns. And then every month I want to sort of do a showcase of thumbnails from people who are in like part of a community or thumbnails that I've worked on to help them. I want to give them templates. I want to give them like a cheat sheet of like the psychology side of things, of like, here's some examples of the emotions that you can pull on to get a click, and then show examples of people like Ryan Trahan who do it very well. And then I wanted to have an interactive workshop where I will kind of host a workshop and kind of go through that process live, and people can ask for questions and I can help a little bit more than in a video. And then I have things like an interactive quiz that can kind of help show like where are your weaknesses. And then I also have the idea of actually interviewing top YouTubers about their thumbnails. Yeah, there's a ton.
It's packed.
It's packed. And that's why I'm like, if I was to give that away for free, that's insane. Like that is Alex Hormozi levels of there's a book and there's a course and there's an audiobook version of it. And there's this and there's that. And like, if I was to release that, I think that it would, you know, break the internet in the creator economy space, because it would be like, holy fuck, there's so much in here. And I wanted it to a very high level as well. I don't want to put out something that's mid. I want it to be like edited perfectly, great design in the PDFs. I want to make sure that I'm on like my A game in terms of like communicating effectively, kind of going back to what we spoke about earlier in this episode, about how do you take someone from a foundational level and sort of bring them up a level or two. So yeah.
Wow. No, that sounds great. That sounds really, really cool. I wonder, you know, maybe to give people a flavor or even just, you know, just generally, what is there something that you find like, because I'm trying to think about like the structure that this comes out in and like, yeah, where you start and kind of what the route through all this is. What's the kind of like the ground zero, like first thing that you imagine being in this course, or like the most fundamental thing that maybe people misunderstand or get wrong when it comes to thumbnails, if you can narrow it down?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to understanding that there's more to a thumbnail than just how it looks, or just handing a thumbnail design off to a designer and then just publishing it. I think you really have to think about the idea, who it is you're speaking to, how are you communicating to them, really like how do you stand out in your niche, and actually borrowing from other niches as well, because there are a lot of people who will copy what everyone else is doing in their niche, and then they get frustrated. They're like, why am I not getting views? And it's like, well, your thumbnail looks the exact same as everyone else's, and you don't have sort of a brand identity there. So it's not like your subscribers will see that and immediately go, oh, it's George's latest video, let me click on that. And then if your thumbnail looks like everyone else's, you're not going to really get clicked, because you're just copying. You know, it's like if you're imitating, you're always going to be one step behind. So there's a lot. I don't really know, because again, like the course I haven't really sort of delved too much into at the moment. It's sort of more around like the modules and doing the research and collating all of the information. But I'm doing the psychological side first. That's the course that I'm writing at the moment before I hop into the design course. But again, like maybe they won't end up being two separates. Maybe they will merge into one and it jumps between the two. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I've definitely found is like as much as what we said at the start about trying to be more systemized with how it kind of goes. I think there's like the odd occasion where there are just things that I'm noticing that like, oh, actually this ties in really well with this thing from like 3 lessons before. So maybe now actually what I was saying here, we could like, yeah, just completely reverse the order that I've said this or that. And yeah, maybe that comes to be the case that you end up merging the two. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see how it goes. And this is even as a writer, like I would enjoy, I think, taking this because it like all these like soft skills, for want of a better phrase, all tie into one another. And if you're trying to understand all of this stuff, particularly like, yeah, the audience avatar thing, like understanding who you're talking to, that's what I've been writing about for the last couple of days. Because it is like the first thing you do in the course, and it's like it makes the rest of your life easier because it cuts off so many avenues that you no longer need to even think about, because you know you're talking to this person, this is the transformation they want, this is what the stake is, these are their possible objections, and it's like you throw all that into the hook. That's how you get them at the start. And I feel like the thumbnail is and then the title, obviously the combo, that feels like a similar thing, but like the visual equivalent of that, where it's like we're trying to speak to someone directly, we're trying to pique their curiosity with some sort of whatever it is, whether it's a transformation or something unbelievable or whatever it is. There's definitely crossover there. So I think it sounds like this course would be useful for people who just want to understand YouTube psychology more broadly even.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any tips on how to find the time? Because I'm so busy with so many other things that I'm really like, okay, how do I even approach this from like a time perspective and yeah, because it's just like there's so much that's in there. Creating things like a PDF checklist and the odd video explaining stuff or interviewing YouTubers about their thumbnails is like relatively simple to do, but coming up with a course and making sure it's very good and that every lesson makes sense and it's clear is a lot. And because I'm doing this all by myself, like the only employee I have is a video editor. Obviously, a video editor won't be able to help with this kind of things. What I need is like a general helper to help with the odd jobs around the business, so that I can focus solely on this course and getting it across the line. I understand why Alex Hormozi takes 3 years to write this book and everything that comes with it. It takes a long time. But I don't want this to take 3 years. I want this to be hopefully done by the end of the year, but God knows if all of that will be done by then,
Yeah. I mean, my instinct is like, no, it'll be next year. But that's only because of my schedule and how well, or rather the schedule I've ended up taking with this. The only thing that I've ended up doing more recently is like, it has to come at the expense of something. So there are a couple of very interesting people that I'd been speaking with just before I went to Edinburgh, and the idea was that I would get in touch with them and we would potentially explore some things when I got back. And I've essentially had to just be very upfront with them and be like, this is still something I would like, but this is my priority for now. And therefore, like, I need to get this done before I'm able to free up my time and commit to other things. I'm also, like, for example, I haven't been doing this. I keep on meaning to do it. I'm putting one-to-one. Obviously, this wouldn't be good advice for you, Jamie, as it's your entire business. But yeah, one-to-one calls, getting rid of those, script reviews, getting rid of those. I'm literally, aside from Mike, who is my main client, and a little bit of work with Creator Wizard Justin Moore, which is a bit more ad hoc. Everything else is gone, basically, because I just need to get this course done before I can free up my even just mind space,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the approach that I have to take. And so I spoke to someone the other day and they were saying, oh, you should take some of your one-to-ones and roll them into like a group coaching thing, where it's just one call. Instead of it being an hour for each client, it's 90 minutes a week. And there's like a hot seat sort of approach where for the first hour, everyone gets sort of 15 to 20 minutes each, goes around the circle. And then the rest of that call was general Q&A. And then the next week you get some new people in the hot seat. So that might be an approach for me, because my Mondays and Tuesdays are just flooded with calls, and then my Thursdays is in the evenings. It's usually like 1 or 2 hours. And then in the daytime, I still have the occasional thumbnail, and trying to do YouTube video and channel management work. Like that's a big one that I do for Davey Fogarty. Just like reviewing scripts and managing thumbnail designers and video editors and everything there. And like that's a whole thing in itself. And then trying to do videos myself, and also try and go to the gym and everything else. Like one of the biggest things actually that really helped me, and I've been doing this for a year and a half, so I don't know if you do it, is just not even like meal prep for myself that I've made, but just ordering meal prep to my house every week. It's like a total game changer, because it's sort of expensive. It's like $200 a month. But in my eyes, if I have let's say one consulting call, that's £250, that 1 hour pays for that entire month's worth of food and some. And how many hours per day would I spend at lunch and dinner cooking? More than 1 hour. And when you do that over 5 days, and then ends up being 20 working days a month, it was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. So for the last year and a half, I've just been having these meal preps to my house, and it's been great. I still don't know how I feel about eating microwaved food every day, but it's been
Not
great
even in the
because
oven, Jamie, put it in the oven.
I could, but I like speed.
No time.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, because when you have all these calls and you're doing all of these things, or you're in the flow and you're sort of working, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm hungry, I've got to think about going to the shops, or have I got that, the ingredients, and then actually I need to prepare it and then cook it and then eat it, and it's like an hour and a half's gone, so being able to just have a meal prep's been great. So I love all of those kind of little hacks that kind of just help when you're trying to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I get it. I feel there's probably like a reason that Stephen Bartlett talks about Huel so often, and Ali drinks loads of Huel. It's like just whatever. If your day is very busy and something's got to give, like for some people, and well, for many people, it makes perfect sense. I've phased in and out of the meal prep stuff. Currently not, because I quite enjoy cooking, and it's like me and my girlfriend kind of time kind of thing. So I don't mind that side of it. But yes, it equally is not efficient, and I should cut it out.
Yeah. No, I think it's good from a social thing. Like if I'm ever cooking socially, it's a completely different thing, because like you say, you get enjoyment out of cooking with friends or family. And yeah, I really enjoy cooking. I was thinking about this the other day. If I was to launch a YouTube channel in the future, that wasn't to do with anything to do with YouTube, it would most likely be cooking, or even like gardening, cooking. I haven't done any gardening. One of my clients is a gardening channel, and I sort of just have kind of loved sort of watching those videos, and it's just like, oh, it's quite nice to, grow things in your own garden and then cook them. Gaz Oakley is a great YouTube channel. If you've seen his stuff, I think he's a Londoner who had a restaurant. It was like a vegan restaurant. And then in 2020, when the world, turned upside down, he moved to Wales, and he bought a little farm. And he just made this farmland. He just grows stuff in his little greenhouse, and he takes all of those ingredients and he makes these really cool recipe videos. He's just like such a nice vibe. But yeah, he's great. That. So I would love to have a channel like that in the future, or even like a Stanley Tucci searching for Italy sort of thing, where I fly to a nice country and get to taste all this amazing food. Like that'd be such a cool YouTube channel to do.
True. I mean, he is from Italy, so I feel like for you, it would be searching for London, and then that would be it.
Well, I mean, there's actually a great YouTube channel that I used to watch like 10 years ago called Jack's Gap.
Yes,
do you remember them? Like the twins, Jack and Finn. They used to make incredible videos, and then they kind of stopped and went off and did all of this sort of sustainable stuff. And Jack's come back within like the last month, and he started to upload these videos of him visiting every area within the UK. So like 1 week he's in London, then he's in Hertfordshire, then he's in Kent, then he's in Sussex, and it's all around visiting like these amazing Airbnb places for like a weekend away, and he does all of these cool activities there. And it's kind of similar to Stanley Tucci, where he'd go and try out all of the different areas in Italy with the different food. So I was like, these are just such cool, fun videos to make. Like I would love to do something that's more like that instead of being sat at the desk. Because one of the most fun videos I think I've ever had filming was when me, you, and Angus and Becky from when we were all working for Ali Abdaal, we did the race to Cambridge and back in one day. And that was just like such a fun video to make. And I was like, I can see why people like the Sidemen have such fun. If that was your life, amazing.
Yeah, it would be pretty sick. Yeah, that was a fun day. Maybe we'll bring it back. Maybe we will race to somewhere in Europe or something.
To Paris or back. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and back. My word. Yeah, let's do it.
But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. And if you're listening to Apple Podcast or on Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening, be sure to give the podcast a rating. It will obviously help us a lot with getting this podcast out there. And as George mentioned earlier in this episode, we actually haven't released any of these episodes so far. I think this will probably be our 9th episode, just sat in the vault. And so we don't know how you guys are loving or hating these episodes. So it'll be good to get some feedback. Like, what do you guys want us to see, to talk about? Do you want to see us talk about more about individual videos, about how we work with our clients? Like whatever, I'm sure we'll be happy to accommodate.
Agreed. We will. We speak on behalf of Gwilym as well.
Yes. Well, hopefully he'll be back next week as well. But I think we'll leave it for there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.